impossible has happened. Unbelievable. No record for human life. Off to the races. Can they catch it?
Now he takes off the shirt. He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms. Bare-chested. Somebody stop
Look
that
out,
man.
here comes the blue coat,
Oh,
Kevin.
they got him.
Here
They're
comes the
coming
blue
from the
coats.
left. Oh, and they tackle him at the 40-yard line.
I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep. I'm talking about balls deep in love.
And now for our feature presentation.
Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan.
Welcome to Balls Deep with Devin and Jovan, where we dive balls deep into the hottest stories in sports. If you're new here, I'm Devin, and I'm joined by Jovan. What's up, Jovan? I hope you're hanging in there.
I'm doing all right.
All right. Well, today's episode is actually episode 28, so we're getting to that 30 mark. So hopefully we can start recording back in person. I missed you. But to start off today's episode, we're going to talk about some MLB. I know the Red Sox just rehired Alex Cora as their manager. This is a hot topic in sports. I know when the news dropped, you immediately texted me saying, I have a lot to say about this. So floor is yours.
I guess maybe it's not as much. My mind was kind of going everywhere when I first heard the news, but I mean, obviously, when he was first hired by the Red Sox, obviously they had a very good team, and especially them winning it there in 2016. As much as I hate the Red Sox, the one positive thing you could pull out from it is Alex Cora being their manager. Him bringing World Series championship to Puerto Rico. It's obviously always good to see minority leaders in higher positions in sports and in general. So obviously that was one good thing, but it's just really disappointing. I feel like a lot of these guys in the MLB got off really easy. Like Alex Cora, AJ Hinch, a lot of the Astros players, even the Red Sox players, got off really easy with that whole cheating scandal. So it was really disappointing to see that, after he serves a 1-year suspension, that he's right back where he already was. I mean, like I said, obviously it's always good to see minorities in higher positions, but that's no excuse to give him a pass. I think that they should have dropped a lot heavier hammer on him. I mean, you got a guy like Pete Rose, who's one of the best players in MLB history ever, one of the best hitters in MLB history ever, who is literally banned from the game of baseball for betting on his own team. It's not like he was betting against his team to, win money. He was betting on his own team. He wasn't throwing games, and he's banned from baseball forever. And then you have guys.
You mentioned Pete Rose because I was going to mention him.
And then you have guys who cheated to win a title. I mean, it's probably one of the worst things you can do. Yet here they are serving a year sentence, and then they're back being manager of one of the highest, one of the best baseball teams in the history of the MLB. One of the best franchises in the MLB. So it's just really disappointing. I even have friends that are Red Sox fans that saw the prospect of this happening and said they didn't want him to be their general manager again. I mean, now just that kind of hanging over, Boston and the Red Sox franchise in general is just not good for the franchise. It doesn't look good for baseball. It doesn't look good for Rob Manfred at all. It's kind of disappointing.
Yeah, for me, I seen the news that, he was a final candidate and for the job, and I was like, there's no way in hell that they're going to rehire this guy, especially just after everything that happened. And the news dropped that, they rehired him, and I'm like, this is you got to be fucking kidding me. And then you texted me, I started laughing. But I like Alex Cora, just like you said, because he's a Hispanic in manager, and obviously he represented Puerto Rico and things like that. But he was the mastermind behind the whole cheating scandal with the Astros. So if anything, I don't like AJ Hinch going to the Tigers either. But I think this incident with Alex Cora is even worse because, like you said, he ended up right back where he started. Even though I thought he should have, got a bigger punishment than, AJ Hinch, I think they both should have been punished heavily, which they weren't. And the fact that the Red Sox fired him and then rehired him a year later just shows that it was more of a publicity stunt. And it was so that they look good in the eye of the public or the eye of the media when they did fire him or, decided to go separate ways in the meantime. And then now they just look like idiots because now their whole season next season is just going to be overshadowed by Alex Cora returning and his suspension and things like that. So I think I'm not saying he's not a good manager, but I just think this was the wrong move at the wrong time. And like you mentioned, Pete Rose, if someone like that is banned from baseball, I don't understand why someone that literally cheated to win a championship is not banned from baseball. So this move was very sketchy, and I don't know what was going through the Red Sox mind when they decided to rehire him, but it just doesn't look good for the Red Sox. It doesn't look good for baseball, like you said. I don't know. I don't know where this is going to lead us, but I just don't. I think him and AJ Hinch should be out of a job at the moment. They shouldn't have been hired to be a manager anywhere.
I agree. Like I said, to touch on Pete Rose again, I mean, the guy's a Hall of Famer, and he's literally blocked from being in the Hall of Fame from something that's so minor to the sport. And then you have guys who literally change the outcome, and then they're just making millions in management positions. It's just
it's like they figured he was betting against some team and was throwing the game, but he was betting on his team to win, and he's banned. So it doesn't make any sense on why these guys aren't banned. And I think baseball should do something about it. I don't think they should allow this to happen, but I think it's a little too late for that.
I agree. With that being said, we're gonna move on to some of our NBA news.
Wait. Lindor.
Oh, Francisco Lindor. The Indians intended to trade Francisco Lindor prior to the season. Do you have any possible landing spots for him?
I think they should have traded him before. I think them waiting to the end of the season to do so, obviously, it might open the doors for more suitors. But I think if they weren't planning on keeping him, they should have just traded him. But I think one interesting landing spot would be the world champion LA Dodgers. Their third baseman, Justin Turner's, he's hitting free agency, so he might not return. So they do have Corey Seager, but Corey Seager could, obviously get shifted over to third base, and they could have Francisco Lindor there. And I think that would be a mind-blowing move, especially with them already having Mookie Betts there and them being already a stacked team. So I think that would be an interesting move. And hey, I'm a Yankee fan. I would love for him to come to the Yankees for the right price, but I don't think it's going to happen.
I mean, I feel like the two obvious teams are always going to be the Yankees and the Dodgers. I mean, they're the big spenders. They're the biggest market. They always have the best assets to go after players like Francisco Lindor. So I won't be surprised at all if it's either of those two teams. But another team I've been reading about to look out for is possibly the Mets. I mean, we saw that they just got rid of their whole front office. They just got an entire new owner. And they're not a team. I mean, they're heading in the right direction. They have a lot of good young talent. And they don't really have that crowded infield like a lot of these other teams do that would have to move around pieces. So I definitely look for the Mets to also inquire about, getting Francisco Lindor as well.
Yeah, that would be interesting because I know they've been big, or they've been rumored to be big on George Springer, shout out New Britain. Uh, so he could obviously be heading to New York. Um, well, the Mets, not the Yankees,
Yeah,
and Real Muto. So they need a catcher, especially a defensive catcher, and stealing him from a division rival in the Phillies could be beneficial to them. They haven't really had a really good catcher since, what do you want to say, Mike Piazza. So they could definitely use him, and having Lindor there would definitely help shore up the infield. And even if they were to go get George Springer, they could use him in center field. And that right there would stack up the middle of the lineup, that 3, 4, 5 spot right there in the lineup. And I think that would be a big moves for the Mets, and that would be a ballsy move by their new owner. And I think they need to do that, especially if they don't want to be overshadowed by the Yankees in New York, which tends to happen all the time.
definitely. I mean, I do think they're like I said, they're heading in the right direction. And like you said, if they make any of those moves, I mean, if they made all of those moves, they're immediately contenders. But even one of those moves projects them very high. I think they'd obviously be a team to take serious. I mean, they kind of already were heading in that direction last year, even though it was with the short season. So.
And now we can move over to NBA news. So the NBA announced that they plan on starting this upcoming season on December 22nd, which is a lot earlier than people were thinking. They were obviously rumored to start in January so that they could return fans. So that marks a 72-game regular season, and for me, I think this is a risky move for the simple fact that players who played in the bubble and are up there in age, like LeBron James, they've already expressed that they're not a huge fan of it because of the short turnaround. They actually have the shortest turnaround in regards to the major league sports, which is around, I think, 71 days. So I think it's very risky, and I think this upcoming season will see a lot of injuries, which obviously we're not going to be fond of. But it's a very risky move by the NBA, and I think although LeBron takes care of his body, he's up there in age, which is going to obviously hurt him because he usually utilizes this offseason to obviously spend time with his family, but rehabilitate his body and take care of it and prepare for the following season. But just with the short turnaround, I think it's going to hurt teams that were playing in the bubble for a long period of time.
Yeah, I think the NBA should have. I think their plan was to try and salvage as many of the games this season as possible. With already starting late, obviously because the last NBA season. But I think they should have erred on the side of caution for the simple fact, like what you just said. Players are now going to be more prone to injury with the quick turnaround, especially the teams that were, in the bubble, were, a part of the bubble and made deep playoff runs, and especially the teams like Miami Heat and, the Los Angeles Lakers who were in the finals. And like you said, a guy like LeBron James who is up there in age. It's dangerous. They don't have that time, like you said, to rehabilitate, to get that off-season work, to prepare their body for another really long season. So obviously there are probably going to be some people who are really excited to go and get in there and, just attack this season. But for those teams that played and made deeper playoff runs, it's really going to be a huge risk for them to play. And I mean, you'll probably see a lot of players sit out games early in the season until, they feel like they're actually physically ready to play.
Yeah, LeBron joked about it, saying that he plans on cherry picking a lot early in the season just because of the short turnaround, which I found hilarious. But I also do think players are going to be sitting out with fake injuries.
Yeah.
More just we're going to see a lot of load management, especially we already seen a lot of load management from key players like Kawhi Leonard, who obviously have injury history. but I think we're going to be seeing a lot more load management amongst the stars in the NBA. And I wouldn't be surprised if LeBron was one of them, just because he's up there in age and obviously wants to secure his body for come playoffs. He wants to be obviously as healthy as he possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, you see it consistently in the NBA where a guy's out with a hamstring injury or, some small injury where it seems not so like. I mean, it seems so non-important, but at the same time, like they always put those players on the injury report before the games, and it's always just to give them a game off. They consistently do that already, so you're probably going to see it a lot more times this season where a guy is out with such a minuscule injury for a game, and then he's back the next game because like we said before, they would just take a game off for load management. Obviously, the NBA started cracking down on that a little bit more, and that's why. They're just putting people on injury report for such minuscule injuries sometimes just to give them that day off. And like I said, we're definitely going to see that a lot more this season.
And with the NBA the NBA draft approaching, these trade rumors are getting very interesting. So there's rumors that there's a bidding war for Drew Holiday, who obviously the Pelicans are looking to shop because they have a young squad, and their Drew Holiday doesn't really fit their plans. So they seem to be shopping him, and he seems to be a hot commodity around the league. There's other teams that were interested in him or shown interest to an extent, which was the Hawks, the Heat, and the Mavericks. But the bidding war seems to be among the Warriors, the Nuggets, and the Nets. All three of those landing spots would be crazy for Drew Holiday, who I feel like is very underrated. He's one of the most underrated players in the league. He is a great two-way player. Amongst those landing spots, I would like to see him in Denver. And the reason why I say that, I think Brooklyn would be a great landing spot for him. They already shown or expressed interest in Bradley Beal, Drew Holiday, and he'd be a nice third piece to Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. But I think I would like to see DeMar DeRozan go there just because with him, his game, he doesn't really stretch the floor, and pairing him with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, who shoot from the stretch, I think he'd be a perfect third star in Brooklyn. In Golden State, I don't really see a fit. So you bring him there. Is he coming off the bench? Is he playing the 2? And Clay's playing the 3? I think he'll play well wherever he goes. But Denver, I think he'll give them an upgrade over Gary Harris to pair with Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, who balled out in the bubble. So if he can continue that play or that level of play, I think Nuggets with Drew Holiday can make a major push. They already made it to the Western Conference Finals, and I think Drew Holiday could be the player to obviously help them try to get over the hump, especially with the Warriors coming back healthy and a lot of interesting teams obviously coming back and competing for what could be probably the most interesting NBA season ever.
Yeah, I agree. I think out of those 3 teams that are in the bidding war currently, Denver is the best spot for them. Especially, a place like Golden State is almost too crowded, especially considering they're getting such a high draft pick this year. And there's just going to be another, prime player there already. But honestly, out of all 6 of those teams that you mentioned, I'd prefer to see him in Dallas. I'd love to see him paired with Kristaps Porzingis and why did I literally just forget his name?
Luka Doncic.
Obviously, that would be a great pairing. And I think that'd be my favorite landing spot for Drew Holiday out of those six teams. Obviously, like you said, the bidding wars between really those 3. But I think the best spot for him is Dallas.
I would like that move to Dallas. I'm just holding out hope that Giannis goes to Dallas and we see Giannis, Luka, and Porzingis trio. But if they were to get Drew Holiday, I could see Porzingis getting out the door and Giannis coming in. But I think you're right. I think adding that defensive piece to pair with Luka will help because Luka lacks on the defensive end. But like I said,
Yeah.
I want Giannis to go to Dallas. So Miami could be an interesting piece there because I think Drew Holiday's a dog. Pairing him with another dog and Jimmy Butler could be an interesting thing. But what are they willing to give up is the question, especially because they have nice young pieces that they want to maintain.
I agree. I know, like you said, wanting Giannis to go to Dallas, which almost seems. I just don't think it's going to happen. But that also brings us to our next one, which is the Bucks eyeing Victor Oladipo, which obviously, if that were to happen, would be a huge impact on the Bucks. Would be just another reason for Giannis to want to stay in Milwaukee, which we all know his wish is to complete his career in Milwaukee. But obviously, with them not really having the talent to surround him, there's been a lot more talks of him possibly wanting out, possibly being traded, or even wanting to leave when he is a free agent. So with Oladipo possibly going to the Bucks, how do you think that affects the chances of Giannis maybe being traded, or even how does that affect like we just talked about, Drew Holiday's possible landing spot?
So I think this is obviously Milwaukee's last push to kind of maintain Giannis in Milwaukee. I do think that they could get Oladipo at a cheap price ultimately, just because he's coming off of a serious injury. But I don't think Oladipo is the right piece in Milwaukee ultimately. I think it'll be a good move, and they'd still be competitors. But how much of an upgrade is he going to be to whatever they already have? That's a serious question. Like at 100, at Oladipo, that's at 100%. He's definitely an upgrade. But that's the question: is he 100%? No one really knows. So I think bringing him to Milwaukee would be nice. But like you mentioned, Drew Holiday. I think Drew Holiday would be a perfect fit for Milwaukee, even though they don't really seem to be showing interest or expressing interest. I just think that he'd be an upgrade over Eric Bledsoe and things like that. He'll also add that shooting ability that they desperately need, because I think he'd be the number 2 piece behind Giannis instead of Chris Middleton. And I think that's because Chris Middleton, although he's an all-star, he doesn't really seem to be reliant, or they can't really rely on him come playoff time. So moving him to the third option would probably be more beneficial to the Bucks in their championship picture.
Yeah, I mean, Drew Holiday definitely offers a more consistent piece as a second option in Milwaukee than Chris Middleton is able to. I mean, we kind of saw him disappear in the playoffs. That's why they struggled. That's why they lost to Miami. I mean, if Milwaukee wants any chance, like you said, if they want any chance at keeping Giannis in free agency, or even just keeping him happy while he's there, they really need to start looking anywhere to grab, to get him another teammate, or just, at this point, get rid of him and get as many assets as you can for him. Because, I mean, he's the best player in the NBA, one of the best players in the NBA. Because, I mean, I guess that's a matter of opinion. But he's one of the best players in the NBA. But he can't do it by himself. I mean, put all the blame on him that you want, but, I mean, he's an inside scorer. He needs to be surrounded by shooters, consistent shooters, or he needs to be surrounded by a lot better talent. That's obviously going to take a lot of the, workload off of him. I think Drew Holiday, like you said, offers a way better consistent second option than Chris Middleton ever could. And, relying a lot less on Chris Middleton as a third option probably could definitely help him, stay in a better rhythm, considering he gets a lot less attention as a third option. And Giannis and Drew Holiday draw a lot of that defensive attention immediately, giving Chris Middleton a lot more space to work with on the floor.
Yeah, and then there's a lot more other trade rumors out there. So, like I mentioned before, with the NBA draft approaching, the T-Wolves, who own the number 1 pick, and the Warriors, who have the number 2 pick, they seem to be exploring trades involving their picks for some like big NBA stars, and Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Ben Simmons, which was kind of mind-boggling to me to see Ben Simmons in there, involved with the Warriors. I don't really see that fit. Like, he's a floor general. He pretty much does it all besides shoot. And I guess with having the greatest shooting backcourt ever, it could work. But they already have Draymond there, so he can't really play the 4. So is he going to play the 3? And they go out and get a center in free agency. Now that I could see, but Steph is their floor general. So taking that away from Ben Simmons, I think, hurts them in a way. But I'd be interested to see Devin Booker go to the T-Wolves. I know Draymond said they get my guy Devin Booker out of Phoenix, and they showed that they can do good things in the bubble. So unless they're adding a piece, I would like to see him go to the T-Wolves to pair with his buddies D'Angelo Russell and Karl Anthony Towns. I think that would be a dynamic trio. You don't really know who's going to be the number 1 option going in every night. So that'd be interesting. But Bradley Beal, he needs to get the hell out of Washington. And I'd like to see him, obviously we're talking about the T-Wolves and the Warriors, but I'd like to see him go to the Lakers. But the Wizards don't really seem to be obviously interested in trading him. But I think if they were to trade him, the Warriors probably can create the best package for him.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more likely that the T-Wolves end up trading their pick than the Warriors do. I mean, there's been a lot of talk of the Warriors wanting to trade their pick, but I don't think they end up doing it. But it would definitely be insane to see Devin Booker go to the T-Wolves and play with D'Angelo and Karl Anthony Towns. I think Devin Booker would end up being the number 1 option every single night, but obviously at the same time, like you said, when you have 3 really great players like that, obviously 2 great scorers in D'Angelo Russell and Devin Booker, who can score from anywhere, it's almost hard to, even though you know who's going to be that first option, it's going to be hard to really be able to stop that because you have 3 guys who can really be first options on nearly any team in this league.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see that move. I think that move is a little bit more likely than, although it sounds insane just them 3 being on the team, I think it's a lot more likely that happens than the Warriors giving up their pick.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Devin Booker is the best player amongst the 3. I'm just saying that, like you said, they could all not be number 1 options on any given team, but they all can stretch the floor as well. So it'd be interesting to see what that team would look like, especially with the T-Wolves having some promise, but not being able to obviously turn things around. And yes, they got D'Lo late last year, so they'll have a full season with him this year. I think they'll fight for 8th seed with the current roster how it is. But I think getting Devin Booker would elevate them to a playoff team. Devin Booker seems to be underrated. Well, he seems to be underrated amongst like the NBA. I don't think so. I think he's a really great player. I think he just gets overshadowed being that he's in Phoenix, but he got some shine in the bubble with them going undefeated and him obviously fighting for that NBA bubble MVP. So I would like to see him outside of Phoenix, but if he does happen to stay in Phoenix, I think they need to add pieces to that team, maybe even going out and getting a Victor Oladipo to pair with them. Who knows? They just need help. Like, he's screaming for help.
No, I agree. Like we said, we saw the Suns do something special in the bubble, but would they be able to actually withhold that level of play throughout an entire NBA season? I don't really see that happening either. But obviously, the likelihood that the Suns give him up, it's tough. I mean, they probably wouldn't want to give up a guy like Devin Booker. And if you ask the Suns, they probably feel like they're not very far away from competing. And I mean, obviously, I know you said you feel like he's underrated, but I think everybody really knows how good Devin Booker is. But we also know just how bad the Phoenix Suns have been. So, but I'd definitely love to see him not in Phoenix and see what he could do with a team like that in the T-Wolves.
Yeah, so with that, we're going to take a break here. And obviously, we're going to return with more Balls Deep. And we'll be talking about some college football. Some big stuff happened yesterday in college football. So you just have to, wait till we come back from break to hear what we got to say.
Yo, what's up, everybody? King Triple C here, the Olympic champ, the flyweight champ, and the bantamweight champion of the world. In other words, the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Man, that's right. Anyhow, I want to give a special shout out to Devin and Jovan. I know you guys have started your podcast, Balls Deep, with Devin and Jovan. I want to congratulate you guys, and I want to tell everybody that's out there that doesn't know about them to you guys follow them, subscribe to them, and you guys make sure to follow them on all your social media platforms, because if you don't, you guys can bend the knee to Triple C.
We're back, and we're going to be talking about some college football. Some crazy shit happened yesterday, and to start off, so Virginia Tech, they spoiled what, would have been a miraculous victory by icing themselves. Yes, you heard it correctly. They iced themselves. So what had happened was So Liberty was kicking a field goal to, take the lead because it was tied 35-35. So they were kicking a field goal, what would have been like a 50-plus yard field goal to ultimately win the game. And Virginia Tech blocked it and returned it to the house for a touchdown. But that shit got called back because their coach called timeout prior to the snap. So then, Liberty got a second chance to kick the field goal, and they kicked it and they made it, and the game was over. So they iced themselves. They could have won the game. Liberty's ranked number 25. They could have, that could have been a big win for them. But since they lost and screwed themselves, I don't know what to say. What you want to talk about a little bit more?
It's an unfortunate turn of events for Virginia Tech. I mean, you can't really anticipate. I mean, obviously, you always hope that it happens, but on a 50 plus yarder in college football, you're more so hoping that the kicker misses it rather than anticipating your team to block and return it. So I mean, you can't really blame them for that happening. Any coach is gonna try to call a timeout before a kick to obviously ice the kicker. And obviously, with it ending up being blocked and returned, it is really unfortunate for Virginia Tech. There's really nothing. I mean, they did what they should have done, and it just bit them in the ass.
Yeah, and then we also had another turn of events with USC. So they stunned Arizona State 28-27 by scoring 2 touchdowns in the final 3 minutes of that game. Which caught people off guard. It was a huge win for USC, and it was dope to watch, honestly. I didn't see them coming back, so the fact that they went out and did what they had to do, kudos to them.
Yeah, I mean, I was paying close attention to that game. I think USC's got a pretty good, young, talented team. Like you said, they scored 2 late touchdowns. Drake London made that nice circus catch. I think he's a really young, talented wide receiver. I think he's a stud. So I think they're going to be pretty good in the future. Obviously, not they're not highly ranked right now. They're not like a top team right now. They're not a team to pay attention to. But I think this win in itself was proof that they're on their way there. Maybe with the addition of some more recruits next year, they could be a top program again.
All right, and then the next subject that we're going to be talking about is my sorry-ass team, the fucking Georgia Bulldogs. So The number 5 ranked team, Georgia, played the number 8 team ranked team in Florida yesterday. Florida, Georgia had a 14-0 lead and they blew it and ultimately lost to Florida. I think it was 41-28. It didn't end so well. So my question to you, I'll answer it after you, but was this Florida's victory over Georgia an indication of a good Florida team or good Florida performance or a bad Georgia team / performance?
Well, I think two things can be true at the same time. I obviously, Florida played really well, and Georgia didn't. I don't know. Georgia always looks really good. Every time they go up against prime opponents, it's kind of almost a toss-up of whether or not they're going to pull the game out. They haven't been able to beat Alabama in recent years. Obviously, they just lost to Florida now. And if I'm a Georgia fan, I'm really disappointed because after losing to Alabama, you're very fortunate to stay at number 5, even though we know how good Bama is. It was no surprise that they lost to Bama. Bama's a really good team. But you're very fortunate to just have been outside of that playoff picture. Now with the loss to Florida, you can practically kiss, any playoff chances you have goodbye. But like I said, two things can be true at one time. I think, Florida was really good, and I just think Georgia wasn't.
So for me, I think I give kudos to Florida for making the adjustments defensively after being down 14-0 because that's ultimately what helped them with come back. And Trask looked amazing. He helped his Heisman chances or his chances of winning the Heisman he had 4 touchdowns at halftime.
That happened, but
so that was good on his part, but I think it was more on Georgia than it was of Florida. They couldn't get anything going offensively. Bennett looked terrible. And then after the game, it was found out that Kirby Smart said that he dislocated his shoulder, which makes sense on why he didn't perform all that well. But even when he was throwing like good passes, our receivers were dropping it. Like there was one pass in particular that just pissed me the fuck off. He passed it to a wide open or tight end that was wide open, and he dropped it. And it's like those big plays, and it was like a 20-yard pass. So those big plays could have helped spark the offense. And when the deficit was only very small, but I think the receivers didn't help him. I know Pickens was out for the game, which was a big loss offensively, but Georgia just looked terrible. And then there was that targeting call. I think it was the right call. I do think obviously there was a penalty on the play, but I don't think it was deserving of him being ejected. And I get it's college sports. If it's targeting, you're ejected automatically. But I just think he tried to get lower than the receiver, like you're supposed to. But the receiver obviously he kind of lowered his shoulders to absorb the hit, and that's kind of where the targeting call came, and he got ejected. But so I do think it was the right call. I'm not really complaining about that, but I do think that hurt Georgia defensively by losing losing a big player defensively in the secondary because they got fried, and it's kind of hard to be a Georgia fan at the moment, but we're sorry. And our hopes to making it to the playoffs were already slim to none after we lost to Bama, but now it's over because we're not. It's most likely going to be Bama, Florida in the SEC championship, and so our hopes of making the playoffs are done. But you can try to get, wins for the rest of the season and just have a 2-loss season and get a bowl game. But if we continue to play like we did in the past 2 weeks, I don't see any bowl games in Georgia's future this season.
Yeah, sounds like a lot of excuses from a Georgia fan. But if you ask me, I ain't have to worry about that. My team took care of business. But with that being said, Notre Dame beat Clemson in 2 overtimes, which was huge news. But obviously, that was with Clemson not having Trevor Lawrence. How do you think this affects Notre Dame and also Clemson now in this playoff race? Who both teams obviously were in the playoffs. Clemson, I believe, at number 1, and Notre Dame coming in at number 4. So how does this affect both teams down the road?
So I mentioned this last time. I think both teams end up making the college football playoffs. Because they'll meet again in the ACC championship, and I do think Clemson will come out on top. When Trevor Lawrence is there, they only lost by a touchdown in double overtime. And who impressed me was DJ. I don't want to butcher his name. It's DJ Ugalele, which is Clemson's quarterback. He's a freshman. He balled out, and he threw for 439 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is very impressive. He's the main reason why Clemson had a chance of winning that game. And it was like he was having a great game, and you would think, he threw for like 350, but the fact that he threw over 400 yards is very impressive, to say the least. It kind of gave me flashbacks to Tua at Bama when he took over, just because they have a similar play style, and he has a bright future when Trevor Lawrence obviously moves on to the NFL. But I think Trevor Lawrence will be the main difference in that game, just because no one expected it to be so close, and the fact that Notre Dame kept it close. Credit to Ian Book, he did what he had to do to get his team the victory. But I don't know, man. I think both teams will make the playoffs, but when they meet again, Clemson will come out on top with Trevor Lawrence. I just think that I don't really know.
I kind of said it on the last episode when we talked prior to the game happening. I said, if Clemson loses this game by 14 or 2 scores or even 3 scores, like I said, Trevor Lawrence is more than capable of making up that amount of points. I think the fact that it took him 2 overtimes and it was only by a touchdown, I think it doesn't look good for no. Obviously you get the win against the number 1. You're happy about that. You're happy that you got the win. But if you're Notre Dame, that's scary. That's an ugly win. And getting torn up for 400 yards from a freshman, your defense clearly needs some work. I feel like, honestly, like I said, they're still undefeated. They'll probably move up now having beaten number 1 Clemson, just for the simple fact that even though Clemson didn't have Trevor Lawrence, they're probably going to fall behind Notre Dame now at just that number 4. Just because, obviously the polls and the playoff committee, when the time comes, is going to have to – they're going to have to, obviously – they're going to have to put it that way just for the simple fact that, Notre Dame beat Clemson, regardless of the reason they beat them. So they're going to have to leave it that way. But it does leave Notre Dame vulnerable, to possibly getting kicked out late in the season. If they keep another game close against, an unranked opponent, or even if they take another loss, or even when they do face, Clemson in the ACC championship and, it's a blowout just with Trevor Lawrence coming back alone. Like I said, it leaves them really vulnerable to getting kicked out of the playoffs right at the end. And you could look for a team possibly like Florida, a 1-loss Florida, to maybe even take over that spot with them now having, beat Georgia. So if I'm Notre Dame, I'm figuring out my defense. I'm stepping it up, and I'm really trying to prove to the playoff committee further down the road that we belong in the playoffs. Because a close game like that, although it is a win, a close game like that to an opposing team that doesn't have their best player, it's alarming, and it leaves them really vulnerable.
For me, this has nothing to do with the team's performances or anything like that. This game pissed me the fuck off, and the reason why it took forever. the end of the game was way too long. It was like a game in itself. I was falling asleep because these refs wanted to review every single play, and it was just prolonging the game. And honestly, I was enjoying the game, but then I started obviously losing interest, and that's why I was falling asleep. It was because those refs kept prolonging the game. So I think they need to work on that because it was a great game. It could be easily be a classic game, but for Notre Dame's sake, when they do meet again, hopefully they don't get blown out when Trevor Lawrence is playing, just so that they could make the playoffs. Because I actually like them in the ACC, and I hope for future references or for future seasons they are still in the ACC and not independent. I think it gives Clemson some competition because the ACC is not that talented at the moment, but it also gives Notre Dame a better chance of making the playoffs because we know in previous seasons when they're as an independent team, it was hard because they didn't really have those big games to kind of push them over the hump.
I agree. But with that being said, that was all we have for you today. Episode 28 of Balls Deep. As always, we appreciate you guys listening to us talk about sports and being interested in hearing what we have to say and our point of view from our favorite teams as well as yours, as well as our favorite leagues. As always, we appreciate the love, comments, subscribe on YouTube, following us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We appreciate, like I said, the comments you guys post, the interactions. So keep doing it up.
Until next time, we'll see you guys. Peace.
You're talking about balls deep.
I'm talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep in love. I'm talking about balls deep.
My boy's talking about balls deep. We're talking about balls deep